Welcome to the Marty Chronicles, part of the Conservative Take platform. I'm Marty Nalitz. Thanks, as always, for viewing us. I want to talk about a couple of things today. I've got some kind of catch-up things on something we talked about before that we'll do at the very end. But really kind of want to get into this Hunter Biden deal right now. You know most of it, but there's some new things that are coming up that I think are important to keep in mind. Let's just back up, make sure we're all on the same page. In October of 2020, the New York Post released a story about this laptop. Hunter Biden, the son of then candidate Joe Biden, had taken his laptop to a Delaware computer repair shop and then forgot about it. Didn't come and pick it up, evidently didn't respond to calls. So at some point, the owner of the place turns the laptop on and he finds some pretty amazing stuff, which he turns over to the Department of Justice. It eventually makes its way to Rudy Giuliani and then the New York Post. Now, when this happened, of course, the wagons circled immediately because these emails tell a pretty horrible story for the Bidens. So naturally, the wagons were circled. Social media did everything they could to shut it down. There was a list of 50 intelligence experts that came together to say this is Russian disinformation. Same thing they tried in 2016. Now, the New York Post, just for the record, it's not some fly-by-night paper. This was a paper that was started by Alexander Hamilton a long, long time ago. So they've got a pretty good reputation over the years. They've been around forever. So it would have seemed to be a reliable source, but that was never going to see the light of day. Of course, like I said, you couldn't talk about it on social media. The New York Post was shut out of Twitter. Facebook moved it far, far down in its feeds to make sure that nobody saw it. So that's going on then. And it bears taking a little bit of a look at Hunter Biden himself. Now, I'm not going to pile on Hunter Biden. He clearly has a lot of problems. I've had problems too. We all have. So I'm not going to pile on that right now. But he does need to be responsible for some of the things going on. And I want to back up with Hunter to 2013, long before any of this was imagined. For some reason that I really don't understand, Hunter applied for a direct commission to the Navy. Now, if you don't know what a direct commission is, if you ever watched MASH, just as an example, the doctors that they get in wartime, they're pretty much direct commissions. They don't go through basic training. They enter as in a captain, a lieutenant, something like that. Now, Hunter, unless he's trying to fulfill something with his father, I don't understand it because, first of all, he was too old. He was 43 and the cutoff is 40. I've read articles by others that tried to get in on a direct commission, being 40 years old, and it just didn't happen. For Hunter, it happened almost immediately. So Hunter is assigned as a public affairs officer, and he goes to work one weekend a month. It's all kind of weird because why do you need public affairs officers on the weekend anyway? But regardless, he's going to work one weekend a month until he tests hot for cocaine and gets kicked out. Now, it was not a dishonorable discharge. It was an administrative discharge. Again, I'm not really clear why he did it unless he wanted it on his resume. You know, it's a very common thing. I live in a district represented by a Democratic congressman, Connor Lamb, who makes a big deal out of he's an ex-Marine. And Connor Lamb entered the JAG Corps in the Marines as a lawyer. He was a lawyer in the Marines. If you ever saw A Few Good Men, he was Kevin Bacon. You know, he wasn't one of the Marines. He was Kevin Bacon. So regardless, he did that. And I don't know if that's what Hunter was aiming for or not, but he ends up getting kicked out fairly quickly. 2 months later, he signs up with a company out of the Ukraine called Burisma Holdings. And they welcome him. He's going to be in charge of opening international relations with countries, with companies. And you'd have to be foolish to not suspect they want him because his name is Biden, and his dad at that time was vice president of the United States. In any event, at that time, when Hunter joined up with him, Burisma was also being investigated by a prosecutor in the Ukraine. That happened when Hunter came on board. And Joe Biden, in 2018, gave a speech to the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations, in which he flat out bragged that he got that investigation squashed. He bragged about it. We're going to show you the clip of it here, and you see for yourself. I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, so go ahead and watch the clip for a second.
I remember going over convincing our team or others to convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to the press conference. I said, no, I'm not going to, or we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid.
So that's what happens after he is, he comes on, after Hunter comes on at Burisma. He seems to be then running the same exact kind of deal in China. And he hooks up he goes into partnership with a group called Bohai Capital. And Hunter introduced the owner of Bohai Capital to Joe Biden in a Beijing hotel in 2013 while Joe was vice president. Now, why is this significant? Bohai Capital had been trying to get licensed to do business in the United States for a long time, over a year, and they couldn't get it done. 10 days after this meeting in a Beijing hotel, their license in the U.S. is approved. So read about that what you will. Now, let's fast forward a little bit to a point where the big guy, as he is colloquially known, Joe Biden, is out of office. Hunter Biden then partners with a gentleman named Tony Bobulinski. You may have read about Tony. You may have seen him. He was on TV for a while, and he dropped some really damaging information on the Biden family. He identified numerous emails regarding Joe Biden and his cuts, the talk about how much for the big guy, how much is being held out for the big guy. Bobulinski says that he recognized very early on that when he went into business with Hunter and Jim Biden, Joe's brother, that it was for one reason only. Joe, of course, was ramping up at that point to make his third run for the presidency, and it seemed like it would be a good idea at the time. Now, while this is going on, China's state-owned energy company invests $5 million in this group with Hunter and Tony Bobulinski. But here is the thing that Tony Bobulinski points to that you've got to wonder about this. They make a deal where this company is going to invest $5 million in their company, but they don't invest it in the company. They pay it directly to the Biden family. And of course, you're probably familiar with the entire email train that comes out about holding back for the big guy, and 10% goes to the big guy and things like that. So why does this all matter? Why is this important at this point in time? Well, you may know this, you may not. Hunter Biden has been under investigation for some time by a grand jury, and the grand jury is investigating his taxes. That's what they're looking at. And forget everything else. Yeah, it looks sleazy. Maybe you broke laws. Maybe they peddled influence, things like that. That's never going to get any traction with anybody. Tax evasion is a different thing. And one of the things that we've now identified from these emails, since the New York Times has now decided that they are real. There's been some real gems coming out. There's more and more all the time because there's so many of them. But Hunter was paying bills for the big guy, or Joe. Hunter was paying his personal bills while Joe was vice president. If you know anything about the way elected officials are supposed to deal with those things, that's not kosher. So that's number one. Number two, Hunter directly paid for renovation to Joe's home in Delaware. Again, maybe it's just a loving son helping out his doddering old father. But, then you get some really bad emails, bad for Hunter, where you have Hunter complaining about how much money he's having to give to Joe. It really, really looks bad. So through all this, would this have made a difference in 2020? I'm not going to get into that because I think what happened in 2020 happened. So in that regard, I don't think it would have mattered. But it does matter today. Is Hunter Biden a deadbeat drug addict? I saw one school of thought that somebody wrote that, you know what? This looks like a cry for help from Hunter. He left it there on purpose. He wants people to find it. And he doesn't have the guts to come out and say, I'm a dirtbag, this is what I did. But he wants people to know about it. I don't know. And I don't know if anything's going to happen moving down the road as this investigation continues. But I promise you this, over the next week, you are likely to see or read about some bombshells coming out of those emails. Because I'm not kidding you, there's so many of them. So many were redacted, and there's so many of them that they're sifting through right now that we haven't seen them all. But I am fairly certain that what I just discussed is the tip of the iceberg. So we'll continue to follow that right here on the Conservative Take. A couple of quick things. Going back to something we talked about a few days ago, and that is the currency problems between the U.S. and Russia. Just before we began today, I got an email, or I saw an email. It wasn't sent to me. It was a text, rather. It wasn't sent to me, but I saw it from the managing economist of Bloomberg. He sent out a text saying that Russia has announced that all unfriendly nations will have to pay for natural gas in rubles. Now, it doesn't identify who unfriendly nations are, but Russia is the largest exporter of natural gas in the world. So this has a couple of implications. Number one, if this was Putin's idea, and don't take this to mean I'm a Putin fan, if this was Putin's idea, tactically, it's a really, really smart thing to do. The ruble is cratering in recent weeks because of the sanctions. But if they go ahead with this, it's going to raise the price of rubles because these countries buying natural gas will now have to buy rubles in order to do it. And that's going to raise the value of the ruble. We'll continue to follow that and see if they actually go through with it. That's going to do it for today. Thank you for tuning into the Marty Chronicles. We'll see you next time.